Chris, welcome to the Dancast. Glad to have you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Can you tell our guests a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am a content creator based in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is kind of just between Toronto and Niagara Falls. I'm a cold water diver. I'm a PADI instructor as well as an AmbassaDiver. And I'm also the creator and host of the Modern Diver channel online, where I create educational content for divers to help educate them on the lifestyle of being a diver, as well as modern equipment and practices and safety and all that type of stuff.
Very cool. How long have you been doing Modern Diver?
Modern Diver, I started in 2020. So just before the pandemic, I had started that up.
All right. And I assume you've been a diver for a while before.
Yeah, I got certified back in 2011. So the way that I got into diving was kind of interesting. So I was about 18, and so I had finished high school, didn't really know what to do. And I was just kind of working odd jobs here and there. And I was actually on vacation with my mom and my brother and sister in Dominican Republic. And we were sitting alongside the pool the one day, and my mom's saying, like, oh, what would you like to do? And I had said, like, oh, I don't know. I was kind of throwing around the idea of maybe becoming like an underwater welder or something like that, but I didn't know anything about diving. And they were actually doing Discover Scubas in front of us in the pool. And so my mom was like, oh, do you want to try Discover Scuba here? And I was like, oh, maybe. And as we were talking about that, the rental first stage regulator actually exploded. Like a high pressure seat went off, hoses were going nuts. It was this big chaotic thing. Maybe looking back at it, maybe it was just an O-ring, but to me, not knowing, it really intimidated me, and I was like, oh, I don't know. And my mom's like, oh, well, if you're interested, back home we have a dive shop called Dan's Dive Shop, and she's like, if you're interested when we get back, we can get you to sign up for your course. And I was like, perfect. So ultimately we got back from that trip, and so I had gone into the shop, and my mom was with me, and we'd inquired about the open water certification, and so I had signed up right away. And as I was going through the training, my instructor, Fawn, who's still a really good friend of mine, she knew that I kind of had an interest in maybe turning diving into a career, and she had actually mentioned to me that the dive shop was looking for a student that summer. And so as I was returning my rental checkout gear, she's like, you should come by with a resume. And so I came in with a resume, I got the job, and from there it kind of just took off. So that first year of diving, I did my open water, my advanced, and my rescue. Then after that, I started to work towards technical diving. Dan's Dive Shop does specialize in kind of the higher end of diving in the Great Lakes. So I had started working, climbing the ladder for that style of diving. Right around 2012, 2013, I started my Dive Master program. And then in 2016, I became a PADI instructor. And then for over 10 years, I was a keystone of that store. I was doing retail and service. I became a hydrostatic technician for cylinders, and I really fell in love with the dive industry. Ultimately, over the years, I had lots of opportunities to be able to lead trips diving. That's one of the cool benefits of the Great Lakes community, is you've got this really busy dive season from like kind of spring to fall, where you're diving locally, and then over the winter, there's lots of opportunities to be able to travel because our local dive sites aren't as accessible in the winter. So I had lots of years of diving, and I always usually had a camera with me in the water, but I never did anything with this footage. And then over the years, working retail and dealing with people looking for gear and dealing with students and stuff, people had always told me that I was really good at explaining stuff and kind of helping kind of just share the lifestyle of diving. So I was like, oh, maybe one day I should start a YouTube channel or something. And that was actually where I went to start with it. And so I had started Modern Diver on January 1st of 2020. I had kind of thought about it at the end of the end of 2019, and so I decided to start it right on kind of January 1st, 2020, and I made a couple YouTube videos. I got things rolling, and then boom, the pandemic hit. We went into lockdown, but in a way that was almost like a blessing in disguise, because I had years of footage that I was able to use, and at that time, I didn't really have a lot of content to be able to make the full-length YouTube stuff, but I was able to get into short-form media. So that was kind of the rise of like TikTok and Instagram. short form media, so I started making videos at that time. And at first I was just sharing videos of my dive adventures and stuff. And the way that my channel really kind of took off was people would ask questions. And so I would actually overlay the video with the question. I'd be like, here's a good question. And I would answer it in a very professional manner, and kind of explain how diving works. And from my instructor background and my retail background, I was able to kind of talk about how it works. As a cold water diver, that allowed me to kind of specialize in that kind of niche of diving as well, which was always intriguing for different people online. And from there, my channel continued to grow. And today, on TikTok, I've got over 174,000 followers. And I've also got, I'm very active on Instagram and YouTube, and I've got a Facebook page and all that type of stuff. And here we are 5 years later, sitting at the Dancast studio. So it's been a pretty wild ride, but it's been awesome.
Absolutely, and it's so cool to hear that you dove right into the industry basically right out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you've done something really interesting in these past 5.5 years. Definitely something unique. So since starting Modern Diver, what are some of the lessons you've learned about content creation, and what is your audience like, and what do they respond well to?
So the interesting thing about that, and especially being based around the Great Lakes and in Canada, obviously the Canadian market's kind of a smaller market compared to the broader industry of diving, and even compared to like the US where we're sitting right now. So one thing that I learned with online content creation was diving can be very different regionally depending where you are, and one way of diving isn't always ideal for another style of diving or another region of diving. So whenever I do make content online, I try to do my best to kind of lay out the pros and cons of doing it this way, and make it understand that it is okay to do something a little bit different, because there are regional limitations to how you can do something, or different limitations on the individual diver and stuff. And also, coming from a tech background, I had always found that there was a really hard line between recreational and technical diving, and sometimes technical divers make it a little intimidating for a recreational diver to climb the ladder, but luckily the dive shop that I worked for really promoted kind of that lifelong diver, and promoted that kind of recreational to tech progression. So I took that, and I was able to make videos along that as well, kind of encouraging people to really seek out Con Ed and understand why something is done at a recreational level, because later on at a technical level, this is where those types of fundamental skills really become important, such as like in the Great Lakes, finning. Finning's a really big one. Like, we don't have sandy bottoms or rocky bottoms, it's silt. And you can, if you accidentally stir up the bottom, visibility is going to go to nothing real quick. Mm-hmm. And then that's those finning fundamentals become really important if you ever decide to become a wreck penetration diver or a cave diver, and or a photographer and those types of things. So I try to create content in a way that is accessible for divers of all levels. So whether they're a non-diver interested in diving, a recreational diver looking to improve just their basic skills, or even a technical diver trying to refine their skills to be able to reach their end goals and dive safely in some of the harshest environments that are accessible to divers.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And so you've said several things here in the last couple of minutes about that kind of reveal an underlying focus on safety. So mm-hmm. finning techniques, good fundamentals. How do you think about safety when you're working as a dive pro versus when you're diving on your own, and versus being a content creator? You know, how do you think about safety? How do you communicate safe practices in all those various settings?
Mm-hmm. Safety is really important in diving, especially as a cold water diver. When you're diving in the Great Lakes, it's not so much a matter of if you're going to have a gear failure, it's when you're going to have a gear failure. So diving in water as cold as 34 Fahrenheit is really hard on any type of regulator. So having redundancy in your kit is important. When we're diving in Canada, there are obviously dive charter operators that run on the Great Lakes. So you are on a boat that has proper safety equipment, emergency oxygen and tools and all this type of stuff. But there's also a lot of opportunities to shore dive. So there's a lot of really cool shore diving sites that are accessible. However, they can sometimes be far away from cities, and the more remote you go, the farther away emergency services can potentially be. So it is really important to make sure that you're prepared for that type of safety. One of my favorite courses that I like to teach actually is the rescue diver course. And I do personally, in my truck at all times, have a fully stocked first aid kit, a Dan emergency oxygen kit, fire extinguisher, throw ropes, different safety equipment, because you never really know what you're going to need on a dive site. And I don't think there's really any piece in that emergency kit that I've never had to use at least once. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my coworkers and fellow divers and stuff have gone through some harrowing experiences on dive sites, but as long as you're prepared for it and you practice and you take diving safety seriously, you can help mitigate the risks. And prevention is always better, but again, it is inevitably going to happen in cold water. So being prepared is one of the biggest things that you need to be ready for. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, obviously you're quite fond of this industry and you jumped right into it. Tell me a little bit about your favorite things about being a diver or some peak experiences you've had working in this industry.
Sure, absolutely. I do really enjoy the dive industry. There's not many things that you can do these days where you truly feel like an explorer, right? So I've always enjoyed the adventure aspect of diving in the Great Lakes, diving in spots that some people just have never been before or just don't even understand that you can actually explore those types of areas. The neat thing too is in northern Canada, you've got like thousands and thousands of lakes, and the more remote you go, if you see a nice lake that seems like it has decent conditions and you crawl in, there's a real chance that you could be the only person that's ever dove in this lake. So you never really know what you're going to see. And it's one of those things, like how many places in the world can you go that you can say like, oh, I'm possibly the first person to ever be down here. So I do like that adventure aspect of it. Being Canadian, we also like to travel in the winter. So the other aspect of diving is the ability to be able to explore different dive sites around the world and different types of environments. I've had the opportunity to dive all over the world, but my heart definitely is in the Great Lakes. So I always do like to kind of come back to the Great Lakes. So I do really enjoy diving the Great Lakes and the history around shipwrecks and stuff like that. As a content creator, I like highlighting the evolution of diving. So I've been diving now for almost 14 years, and it has evolved quite a bit in that time from when I first started diving to now, just between diver training and styles, equipment, technology, all of that stuff has ramped up quite a bit. Technology is kind of a nice segue as well. The reason I'm here in North Carolina with you guys is because I was recently at the Garmin event a couple days ago with Garmin's new technology now that allow divers to send messages to each other via sonar. So being able to be on the cutting edge of technology in diving is really neat, and getting a chance to kind of test out some of these new products and be there as they're launched is always really exciting to me. But diving is definitely one of those things that should evolve over time, and I like being able to highlight that and promote that, because there are sometimes people in the industry that are a little stuck in their ways, or they dive in kind of these older styles, and they're a little hesitant to adapt to new technologies. But ultimately the goal of, I think, most brands and agencies, just like yourself, is to continuously make diving safer, and that Garmin Subwave technology is a good example of where they are trying to make methods for divers to be able to navigate back to each other if they get separated, ways for divers to be able to communicate, ways for working divers to be able to more efficiently complete their tasks and get out of the water in more efficient timelines, right? Which just in general makes everything safer. So those are definitely some of the things that I really enjoy in the dive industry. Yeah.
Excellent. And so I understand you're a Dan member. So if you wouldn't mind telling us why you support Dan, or why you
Absolutely.
became a member.
So the Dan membership is really nice because it does allow you to have full coverage for diving emergencies, especially when diving in remote areas of the world or doing more advanced levels of diving. So in Canada, we do have free healthcare. So in recreational diving and technical diving situations in Canada, if we were to get injured, we're covered in that scenario, so it's not really too big of a deal there. But search and rescue is not always. So having something like a DAN membership in the Great Lakes can still definitely be beneficial if you're doing some remote diving in the middle of the lake. And that's another benefit of having products like the Nautilus Lifeline or even the Garmin InReach products, because the Great Lakes are big. A lot of people underestimate how big the Great Lakes are. As a Canadian, when traveling abroad, so that's where we have to get generic travel insurance, which doesn't always include diving, especially the more advanced levels of diving. So having a DAN membership allows you to have that kind of peace of mind that regardless of where you are in the world, if something was to happen, you've got those resources to be able to get the adequate care that you need, and even potentially an evacuation back to your home country or a better prepared facility. The other benefits you get with the DAN membership obviously is like the Alert Diver magazine. So you guys do a really good job of putting some really interesting articles in there. And I've also actually been a fan of the DanCast podcast. I've seen quite a few of these episodes. So I do feel honored to be here for sure. And I'm definitely a huge fan of this organization.
Great. Well, we appreciate it. And thanks for being here. So, Chris, what are you working on now?
Yep. So these days, still continuing to work on the Modern Diver channel. So I've got lots of really cool collaborations in production and coming up. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Back home in the Great Lakes, I'm also a member of SOS, which is an organization called Save Ontario Shipwrecks. So the Great Lakes have a lot of shipwrecks. There's estimated between 6,000 and 10,000 shipwrecks in the Great Lakes, and they are continuously being found year over year. The Great Lakes are all freshwater and cold, and there's not a ton of marine life, so these wrecks are often very well preserved. Just in my backyard, about 3 miles from the shoreline, we have a shipwreck called the Tiller Shipwreck, which is a 99-foot 3-mast schooner that sits at 100 feet. And the reason they call it the Tiller is because instead of a wheel, it has an 11-foot tiller arm, which means it was built pre-1850. It has similar ship construction to the War of 1812, but it does look like it was a merchant vessel. But there's no record of this wreck, so nobody actually knows the true name of it. But that's an example of one of the really cool shipwrecks just in my area. So with SOS, I'm actually part of the Niagara chapter of SOS, and we kind of revitalized our local chapter. And so we now, myself and I believe we're up to almost 23, 24 members, we now are kind of the stewards of 7 shipwrecks in our area. So we manage 1 shipwreck in Lake Erie, and we also have 1 shipwreck in Lake Ontario and 6 shipwrecks in Lake Erie. So what that involves is doing the annual moorings, both in the spring when we're getting ready for the dive season. So these moorings are usually attached to some sort of concrete block or a really stable component of the wreck, where we then have the mooring line which goes to the surface. We've got a large marker buoy which is then registered with navigational charts, so that way we don't have to worry about the international freighters accidentally dropping an anchor on one of these wrecks when they're waiting in line to enter the Welland Canal. And then this also gives divers, dive charters, something to tie off to, so divers can safely navigate themselves to and from the wreck. And then in the fall, we also remove these because the storms in the Great Lakes in the winter can be extremely rough, and these moorings will pretty much just get ripped right off the wreck. So that's one of the reasons why we have to deploy them and then remove them in the winter. Additional to this, we also work on educating the community on our maritime history. And again, in the Great Lakes area, there's a lot of locals that just have no idea the history within the Great Lakes, and they don't know that we've got these amazing shipwrecks. So it's really cool to be able to kind of share that with our local community. And sometimes this also requires us to be able to help maintain these wrecks. And what I mean by that is, for an example, last year there was a shipwreck named the Niagara that actually was draped over by a ghost net in Lake Erie. So some commercial fishing vessel would have lost their net that would have drifted in Lake Erie, and it draped itself over the stern of this 1800s shipwreck. And so myself and a couple other volunteers had to go out on a few different dives where we had to go down with cutting tools, remove parts of this net, make sure that we're not kind of breaking off any boards or anything, and then bring them up to the surface with lift bags. As a PADI AmbassaDiver, I'm actually working on a PADI blog about this, so at some point there'll be a pretty large article that comes out going more into detail about the history of the Great Lakes shipwrecks and kind of the work that we do with SOS. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. But yeah, that's one of the big projects we've been working on this year, which is really rewarding. And part of that also means potentially finding new shipwrecks. So I've had the opportunity over the years to dive some newly found shipwrecks, and even in our region, we've got a couple points of interest that we've discovered on our depth finder that we would like to get out and explore to see what they're like. And we even have another couple wrecks that, as our community helps support our local chapter, we would like to actually increase the amount of wrecks that we are mooring annually, so that we're also unlocking new potential dive sites for divers to be able to explore and again just learn more about their maritime history. So yeah, super cool.
Well, fantastic, Chris. We really appreciate your time. It was great having you on the podcast, and I look forward to following your adventures through the Modern Diver.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to interview me today, and we've also worked on some of our own collaborations today, so those are things to keep an eye out for on both the Modern Diver channel and through Patty as well. So yeah, it's been a really exciting and informal day. So yeah, thanks again. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see you at DEMA as well. We're in that time of year where everyone's starting to plan for DEMA. So I do plan to hopefully hit up Orlando this year and see you guys again.
All right. I hope to see you there.
Awesome. Thank you.